Hello, everyone. It's 10 a.m. in Sofia, Bulgaria, 9 a.m. in the Netherlands, and who knows what time it is where you are watching us. It has been an amazing week of announcements at AWS Reinvent, and because we're all closed in our homes with our family and constantly trying to do some work and make a living. Survive the time with our families. It's been a struggle to keep up to date with the news. So we're going to try and summarize what the important highlights were from this week and what they mean to you and your business. And I'm here with Walter Heck, CTO of our office, Ivo Vrobchev is the head of the professional services organization in HeleCloud, and Carlos is, I don't know how to describe him. He's doing everything.
Just Harry.
I would say secret weapon, but hey.
Yes. Yeah, we love Carlos. Okay. So, Carlos, what were the most important things for you from the AWS Reinvent announcements?
So for me, I've got two things that I watch keenly with AWS. I was, a long time ago, I was early into relational databases when they were first coming out. So I'm always interested in see what comes out in the database space. And this year, really the two things for me that were interesting were the ability to run Microsoft SQL Server applications on Postgres, Aurora, with Babelfish, and the serverless version 2. Those are the two things. So I think the first one could be a game changer. It's early days yet to see how SQL Server applications actually perform on top of Aurora Postgres. It's pretty easy to make simple things work in that kind of environment, but obviously most customers don't run simple applications on top of SQL Server. They run more sophisticated things. So I think there's two things that we need to watch out for. The first is some areas of compatibility where things may not work as expected. And the second thing is performance. SQL Server is a pretty well optimized database system. So if people are seeing a certain level of performance, whether that level of performance is going to degrade as they move across to Aurora, it remains to be seen. So I think those are the key things I'm going to be looking out for.
I think it's what you're saying is correct. I think that what AWS is shooting for is the 80-20 rule that will work for 80% of the applications that are not necessarily looking for like the super high performance, and the ones that that will probably not suffice.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think the other consideration is that, to me, this seems aimed at people running this type of application, but more on the development side. They didn't really talk about the fact that, if you've got SQL Server applications, you've got SQL Server database admins, right? So you've now got to transfer across to a different type of database, and things don't work quite in the same way. So maybe that's an opportunity for people like us, right?
Well, unfortunate. Give us more money and we'll take care of your stuff. But yeah, I think you're right. I think on this call we happen to have a pretty heavy database background, because Lina, you also have a database background, right?
Yeah. I used to want to be a DBA, and I specialized in Oracle some 10 years ago. Feels like such a long time. Things have changed, but yeah, we had materialized views in Oracle back then, and it was a great strategy for performance if you had a data warehouse, or had to do some really complex analysis of your data. And now the fact that you can do that across multiple databases on AWS I think is a game changer. But what I'm really interested in is what this means about the serverless version 2 in terms of cost optimization. Because how is this going to change the amount of resources you provision for your database? What do you think?
That's a good question. I think that for me personally, I don't have that much experience with the Aurora serverless. Ivo, do you know if we have experience with that?
Yeah, we have experience, and we are recommending mainly to have Aurora serverless for non-production environment, mainly because it still has 5 to 50 seconds scaling period. It's going to decrease dramatically the price because the performance is better on the scaling front. So we can have staging, for example, running on the Aurora serverless, as well as some of the productions which are not so high intensive on the database side. That will reflect directly to applications, and that will help us a lot.
Yeah, so I think serverless version 2, this is what they should have brought out as version 1, really. That version 1 was kind of like, yeah, who's going to use this then, But one of the things AWS is really good at is they're really good at improving services over time, and actually giving you ultimately what you want. And I think this is, they're calling it version 2, but for me, this is really version 1. This is where it should have kind of started at, really. If you're going to have a serverless database, it's got to be serverless, and it's got to have that immediate response to requests, not 50 seconds. That's just kind of bizarre.
Yeah, and I think Andy mentioned something like 90% decrease of the cost, to be honest, from version 1 to version 2, which is quite impressive, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've done some things around costs across several services. I noticed also the Lambda charging period has decreased.
Yeah, it has been decreased from 100 to 1 millisecond, which definitely will reflect on the customer's bills. That will decrease our bills with a lot of money.
And I think what is more important there is that it leads to a new strategy, because before having really small functions that would run in sub 100 milliseconds didn't necessarily pay off to optimize them or to split them up in separate functions. But now that it's 1 millisecond, you can have 10 functions of 5 milliseconds and still pay for 50 milliseconds instead of where you first had 10 functions, you would pay for 10 times 100 milliseconds, and that's where where the cost reduction comes from. So you see a lot of people saying like, oh, the most functions run in more than 100 milliseconds anyway. I think that the proof is in the pudding, of course, but I think there's quite a bit of a reduction for most people.
Which immediately leads us to the question how we are managing so many microservices. And this is something of the interesting news that has been announced this week, AWS Proton, which is going to help us in managing serverless and microservice applications in order to make our life easier, because at the moment there was no tool that can manage all those components. We had to rely on the old CI/CD tools that are not especially designed for that. Not having Proton, it's something very interesting, and I would love to see it in production soon.
Yeah, I think it will have to tell over time what it actually does, because there's quite a bit of discussion on what this actually is. And the best explanation I've seen was somewhere on, I think it was on Hacker News. One of the devs of the Proton team said this is mostly geared towards places that have a platform team and a developer team. So it's for larger environments. So if you have a team that maintains let's say the Kubernetes platform, and you have developers that want to deploy applications on top of that, that's where Proton comes in handy. So I think also for our managed services, this will be quite an interesting thing to look at, because it should make it easier for clients to develop stuff on top of the stuff that we're managing for them. So, curious.
It seems like the tendency is to start consolidating all those DevOps tools that we use for release and development or for managing applications and infrastructure. Didn't HashiCorp release something similar earlier this year?
They did, yeah. It's also workflow related stuff, and I think it's clear that it's a space that needs development, because currently, unless you're using like the EKS or Fargate, managing your own Kubernetes is pretty much a nightmare. You need to learn about so many different concepts that having any kind of effect from that is there's lots of overhead. And so it seems clear that these platforms are trying to make that journey a little bit easier.
Yeah, there was
how that will go.
this meme that the actor who played the Joker in the movie worked with Kubernetes for 6 months to prepare for the role.
That's funny.
But we're addressing this with technology.
Nice.
There was also the Lambdas, the fact that you can package it as a container also sounded very interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the game changers, because at the moment, people are quite offensive when they have to develop something for a specific platform. But now they can use their old way of developing containers and then just import them into Lambda function, which gives them more visibility and also decrease time to convert from something that already exists in their containers and spinning it in the Lambda function. This is definitely something very interesting and to increase the velocity of delivering applications to the cloud.
I think it's great. One of the things that I've come across quite often in the past when talking to people about serverless, and trying to convince them that they should go serverless for their applications, is they say, "Oh no, I can't understand that. It's too complicated." And then they say, "What I'm going to do is I'm going to do containers instead with Kubernetes." And you think to yourself, "You've got to be kidding me! That is that's simpler." So this kind of takes that away. They can't say, "Well, I don't really understand that." You say, "Well, just make a container and just shove it into a serverless function." There you go. Sorted.
Yeah, I think that these things are quite interesting also for development workflow. That from what I'm understanding, it should be able to enable developers to move a little bit faster, because sometimes you having to do everything on AWS itself is quite a thing. I'm curious to see. Personally, what was my favorite announcement was Mac on EC2. Just that, unfortunately, the Apple license agreement makes it, for now, difficult to justify.
Prohibitively expensive or just very expensive?
Well, so yeah, the reason it's prohibitively expensive is that Apple's user agreement, and this is not for AWS only, it's for everyone who's using a Mac. Apple's license agreement was updated to say that you could only rent out a Mac to a third party for a minimum of 1 day at a time. Yes. Which makes no sense. However, AWS is not more special than anyone else using Macs, because it's really just Mac Minis in a data center, and the result is that while the Mac on EC2 is billed per second or whatever per small unit, the moment you spin one up, you're paying for a day. So 1 second of usage costs you $26, because that's the billing for a day. And the part that got me so excited was that iOS developers and all of those people, they would be able to leverage this to have their CI/CD pipelines fully in AWS, so that you could they can get rid of a closet full of Macs in the office. But then this makes it kind of meh, because a single instance will cost you, if you have a single instance running for a year, it'll cost you like $9,000 to run a Mac for a year. That's quite a lot of money. So I'm hoping that this will see adoption from people who actually can afford to have to spend that much money on a Mac instance, and then in a year from now they'll figure out a way with Apple to say, hey, maybe it makes a little bit more sense to drop that 24-hour requirement.
Yeah. So the latest generation of Mac Minis with an M1 processor costs $900 for the entry level one. So it's like it's a difficult justification, isn't it? Cost-wise.
Well, it's not entirely apples to apples comparison, considering that that $900 mini, you still need someone to manage it, and you need to deal with failure, and you need I think the added advantage for having it run inside a VPC inside AWS is that it can natively talk to all the other AWS services. So if you have a development pipeline, if you have an iOS app that needs to talk to, I don't know, an Aurora DB, if you have your Mac sitting in your office closet, then you need some way for the application running on that Mac to reach out to your Aurora DB, which obviously is extra fiddling with stuff that can all break and all needs to be maintained. And now you can run it in AWS. So it's not a fully bad idea, but I think that it'll be a while that we need the first adopters to kind of drive the pricing down, which is quite normal with the AWS stuff.
Yeah, it's quite expensive at the moment. I think it's $1 per hour, which is significant amount of money for such type of instance. The other interesting thing is that it's powered on Nitro, so the AWS chip is becoming a huge player in that field as well. But definitely will speed up the process, the testing process, especially on the end-to-end testing, because at the moment it was nightmare for QA teams to test applications faster.
Curious.
And what do you think about the amount of news around artificial intelligence and machine learning being integrated into existing services? I think that was also another trend in this year's announcement, specifically from this week. I noticed AWS Connect, QuickSight got powered up by ML functionalities. I'm very hesitant on how well these are going to work, as I always am with anyone promising KIML functionality. It sounds
as usual, we'll see. I'm quite interested in DevSecOps features and new services that has been released. For example, DevOps Guru is machine learning powered service that is going to help the operations teams to do their day-to-day jobs and reduce the expensive downtime. But we definitely have to see it in action in order to be able to provide some more valuable feedback. On paper, sounds very, very interesting. We'll see how it works in the next couple of weeks, and probably we'll write down a few blog posts, write papers, or follow us on that topic as well. And another very important feature that has been released from my perspective was security detector for Code Guru. AWS again are showing us that security is priority number one for them. It's ML powered feature and detects and scans the code for automated reasoning in order to help identify security risk from the top 10 of WASP project, which will make the applications more secure.
That is interesting.
There are already a number of tools that are doing this with predefined rule sets. What do you think is ML going to bring to the table?
More analysis and detecting more vulnerabilities. Because at the moment, scans are static, which leads us in the situation that someone should define them in order to be able to scan against them. With machine learning in the game, we will be able to scan multiple application codes, analyze them, and then apply what is found against every new code that show up. And this is going to be automatically, so not just static. This is the importance here, I think.
It's quite interesting. I just by pure coincidence, I was on an AI roundtable last night, and we had a speaker who's been running AI businesses since 2016, and he had quite a bit of things to say about this. And basically, it's once more the 80-20 rule. All of the so the standard SageMaker stuff will fit 80% of the businesses that are not having AI as their core business. But then if you want to do really groundbreaking stuff on AI field, he was also saying like right now you still need to build custom stuff because that will far outperform these the standardized things, simply because that's not what the SageMaker stuff is aimed for. And I think it's the same thing here again, and specifically on this scanning code for security incidents. I think it's really interesting because it's as you say, Ivo, it's a how to say that, we're learning from not just your own code, but everyone else's code as well. And at the same time, this thing is supposed to get better at recognizing patterns over time. And if and when new patterns emerge, it should also be recognized. So I'm curious to see it in action.
I've noticed an interesting and possibly significant change in what customers are saying about machine learning since last year. Last year, we were going out and talking to them and saying, "What are you doing about machine learning? Is there any way you can use artificial intelligence in your business?" And most times we drew a blank. They hadn't really even thought about it. But this year, I've seen a lot more customers come to us saying, actually, we think there's a specific business case that we have inside our organization where we could use machine learning. And this is the kind of thing that we'd like to do. So they've actually had a chance now to start thinking about how they can use this technology in their organizations, rather than the case of, well, we'd all like to use machine learning, but we don't know how we're going to use it in our business. Now there's really a definite, this can help in this particular business space. And that's good, I think.
Yeah.
And Carlos, what do you think the SageMaker pipelines that has been announced as well are going to help the customers that don't have any experience at the moment with AML and would like to structure their flow in delivering machine learning services?
I think it will. I think it will definitely help. As a general thing, I think AWS has been good at building point solutions for a number of different things. I think AIML is one area. Databases is another, because they've got like 8 different databases. But then if a customer wants to actually build a business process around those, how do they do that easily? It's not easy. There's a lot of work in joining that together. So things like that and the materialized views for the database services, I think really help to move those customers forward without having to do a lot of extra work.
I think the next step to all this on machine learning is to actually help customers be part of the learning. Because right now, even in CloudWatch anomaly detection, there's no way to report a false positive. And imagine starting to run Code Guru and other AIML functionalities, and they will have false positives. They're not going to get it right 100% of the time. And this interface where you as a user can say, you got this one right, this one you didn't get right, I think is going to be crucial in improving those services in the future.
I agree. We
agree.
we have a comment from a certain gentleman called Deutschen on YouTube. I can put it on the screen like this. Oh. So the Deutschen's question is, great that AWS is developing the serverless ecosystem. Are there plans for ARM capable serverless, for instance, Greengrass on Raspberry Pi, or serverless on ARM based machines? For me, it's an interesting question, because this is one of the questions I had watching the Mac on EC2 announcement as well, because then one of the first questions a lot of people asked was, where are the M1 processors in this story? And they're coming next year, but that means that more and more processor architectures need to be supported. And ARM seems to be doing quite well. There's also this, the EC2 instances on ARM that seem to be quite useful for certain applications. So I'm curious to see how this will develop. Of course, we have no insight into whether there's plans for this or not at AWS, but it would be in the logical line of expectations for me at least. And it would be great if that was an actual thing. Greengrass on Raspberry Pi, that would make me excited, personally.
Yeah, and AWS are already in the chip development, as we saw from one of the announcement. So Andy announced AWS Training, which is competing directly with Hammond Gaudi, that are chips specifically developed for machine learning, which will decrease the customer cost with something like 90% based on the Andy J's words. And that's very impressive, because AWS demonstrate again that they care for their customers, and looking to provide specific instances for training machine learning algorithms. It's one of the important things that they see in their role. So that was quite important announcement from my perspective as well.
Yeah, agreed. I think that things like a Mac on EC2 is not something they had to do. It's not something that was a logical expectation. But when you think about it, it's something that many customers are going to benefit from, and it's really a customer-centric thing to do. And of course, the little promo video they made nicely outlines that. I doubt that was the actual timeline and storyline, but it gives a good indication of how the customer obsessed part is leading to interesting technology explorations.
Yeah, and I think AWS are doing a good job addressing customer challenges, because they demonstrated that they think of not only quote as a first, they're helping their customers in integrating things and doing them properly on premise as well. Outpost was a good example last year. This year we have two new sizes of Outpost, one new and two EU as well. Also, they announced that ECS and EKS will be announced as services that can be deployed on premise, and they're called ECS and EKS Anywhere, which will definitely help the migration from on-premise to cloud to go more smoothly, having small steps between the jumping the AWS and making the road more clear for you by integrating some of the well-known services in the cloud on-premise and start using them.
It's very interesting indeed, because I think it's quite telling that obviously AWS would like you to run everything in the cloud, period. But then this is an acknowledgement from their side that is simply not the reality for most larger environments, especially when you're looking at the announcements for the manufacturing industry. Those people are still running a physical factory. It's not feasible for them to run everything in the cloud. They can do 80% or 90% in the cloud, but definitely there will be stuff locally. And I think that's where this movement is quite interesting to see.
Yeah, but as we saw from Andy's report, we're just in the beginning of that move. Only 4 to 5% from the industry are in public clouds. So we have everybody else to start thinking of how to migrate or how to implement at least best practices that are invented in the cloud into their on-premise in order to make their move easier.
Guys, now our time is nearly up, so let's do a roundtable. What do you think will be next week's announcement? And I would like to go first. I think there will be machine learning and artificial intelligence in Security Hub.
Probably you have some insights.
A little bit. Saying we're working on it, but it wasn't coming anytime soon. So I wonder if there's going to be something this year or maybe next year. But it makes sense because it's security related, AI/ML related, and they have to keep developing the Security Hub service. But yeah, Carlos, what do you think? What's your bet?
I don't know, but I'm looking forward to all of it.
Okay, Ivo?
I'm not sure that this is going to be announced this year, but I definitely would like to see improvement on resource visualization and cost management in AWS. Those are two domains that are lacking behind a bit at the moment. It's very challenging to very easily visualize every single resource that is running across the all regions that we have in different availability zones. And if AWS provide a service or way to do it, it will be a way to do it more easily, because at the moment it's consuming a lot of time to find every single resource. Will be very nice, to be honest. And the second thing that I would like to see is cost management. So for example, something that shut downs all resources if you hit certain amount of your bill, let's say. At the moment, not every AWS account is production, and most of the accounts are development or sandbox accounts. So company will definitely benefit from that, from such type of service that could be provided by AWS.
Yeah, if you're turning this into a wish list, I want to see an improvement on CloudWatch. I think this is also one area that's lagging behind to Azure specifically. It's in terms of how you correlate metrics, in terms of the dashboard functionalities that you have. There's a lot that can be done on that front. Walter, what do you think? What would you like to see next week?
That's a good question. What I would like to see is more things on the database side, because obviously I have a love for databases as well. I think that Aurora Serverless is interesting, that it's improving, but I feel that the MySQL side of things is lagging behind a little bit. So I'd like to see some improvements there. Then when we look at the two biggest areas that are cloud challenges, not AWS specific, but cloud challenges, cost optimization and security. Hoping to see something in the cost optimization space, and following this trend of machine learning applied to specific AWS problems. I wouldn't be surprised if they improve that space a little bit. And to add a little bit on to what Ivo was saying, being able to shut down or stop spending once you reach a certain limit. We have 100 AWS engineers that are all having sandbox accounts, and every single month we're spending a lot of money on simply people forgetting to turn off instances, and now we have to script this with external tooling. And it would be great if that wasn't external tooling, but just simply
it's internal tooling, but yeah, it can never be 100% effective because people can spin all sorts of resources in all sorts of regions, and it's just you're running behind on what people can do. It's very difficult to do it all encompassing, and it has to be all encompassing.
Yeah, hence the reason I prefer to be service provided by AWS, because you are always lacking behind by introduction of new service or new feature, and that is consuming a lot of time for operation and maintenance of your scripts in order to keep them up to date and working properly on the AWS estate.
Okay, guys, 5 minutes overdue. So let's thank every one of our watchers today and talk to you all again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.